Good morning, everybody. Today we are talking about the form of the march. The music in the background here on our main screen is Semper Fidelis. This is the second clarinet part that I'm going to be using as a demonstration today. So, what is form? Form is the structure of a musical composition. The term is regularly used in two senses, to denote a standard type or genre and to denote the procedures in a specific work. So we're talking about form as it applies to marches. So probably the first definition, standard type or genre. We're also going to be talking about dissecting melodies a little bit, which is what the second part of that definition is referring to. Not all marches contain all typical march form pieces. It's going to be very important for you guys to remember. So our introduction is usually 4 measures in length. It's going to be rhythmically active. It's going to be marcato, played with a lot of emphasis, and we use it to catch the attention of the listener. It's going to establish the tempo right from the beginning. So in some marches, this could be a drum break. In some marches, this is going to be the whole band. So Semper Fidelis is an example of the whole band playing the introduction. And here is what the introduction sounds like. So you can see that it's actually 8 measures in length, but this march is in 6/8 time. So 4 measures of 4/4 will equal that of 8 measures of 6/8 time. All right, our next part of our march is the first strain. So the first strain is the first melody that's presented. It's usually 16 measures repeated for a total of 32 measures and is generally light in character. This is the first strain of Semper Fidelis. All right, so that first strain was 16 measures long with a repeat. So that's going to go from measure 9 all the way to the end of measure 25. It's our first melody that's presented, and it was very light in character. All right, the next part of our march is going to be called the second strain. It is going to be a different melody, but it's going to be about the same length. They're usually 16 measures repeated for a total of 32. Sometimes, if the second strain is repeated, a different instrument and or different dynamics might be used the second time. This strain is often more powerful and rigorous than the first strain. So here is the second strain of Semper Fidelis. So you can hear more instruments are playing that time. It was more powerful. It's still the same 16 measures. The next part of the march is called the trio. This sometimes includes an introduction. Actually, you can see here in this march, there's an 8-bar drum introduction to the trio. We're not going to be listening to that today, but it does sometimes happen. There is always a key change. So here we have 2 sharps and next we have 1 sharp. It's usually to the subdominant. Sometimes there's a meter change. The trio is usually more lyrical in style, but it has the same kind of pattern. We're going to usually see 16 measures for a trio repeated for a total of 32 measures. The Semper Fidelis trio is a little bit different because it's actually 16 measures repeated 3 times. So we're going to listen to it now. That was the trio of Semper Fidelis. I said that wrong. Semper Fidelis. All right, the next part is called the break or break-up strain. It's also known as an interlude or a dogfight. It's loud, intense, marcato, usually 16 measures. It's going to sound like there's a powerful battle or conversation happening between groups of instruments. And it builds tension often through chromaticism of harmonic complexity. That's a lot of music jargon to say it uses chromatics usually. This march does not have a break or break up strain, but they are they're usually easy to spot. So if you are playing a march with a breakup strain, it's going to sound like there's a battle going on between 2 parts of the band. It's usually like the trumpets and woodwinds versus the low brass. That's something to listen for. And it's usually very different from everything else in the march. The next part of the march is called the final strain. It's the final repetition of the trio. Often, once again, 16 measures repeated for a total of 32 measures. It's louder and uses more sections of instruments. It should provide a sense of closure, and it sometimes introduces an additional counter melody. So this is the final strain of Semper Fidelis. So that was the final strain. And the very last thing that's typical of a march is a stinger. This particular march does not have a stinger, and it feels kind of empty without it to me. So the stinger would happen right here on beat 2, very similar to our fight song. We have a stinger in our fight song. It's a chord often added at the end of a march. It's typically played by everybody in the ensemble. It adds punctuation to the end of the march, and it's optional. Certain types of marches don't add a stinger. But you definitely know a stinger when you hear one. So now we've gone through all of Semper Fidelis, listening to each section, but now we're going to get to listen to the whole thing. So here we have the second clarinet part that we've kind of been going through and listening to. So I'm going to call out each section as it starts so that you can kind of hear the change in section. So we're going to start with the introduction, of course. This is the first strain. This is the second strain. Sorry, this is the introduction to the trio. This is the actual trio. And here's the final strain. So I hope that as you're listening to it put all together, you could hear all the different sections of the march. Because tomorrow we're going to do an assignment where you have to identify the sections of the march that we've been playing in class. So make sure that you listen and understand all of the different sections of the march. And have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.